Hi everybody, Gordon Hollings here again. Today we are going to talk about loading, some general rules and methods, a couple of tips, and some forklift handling. And as usual, please share your tips and knowledge in the comment section. So let's get started with point number 1.
So the first thing we want to do before start any loading is to make a plan on how we're going to load everything. I get a list every day on all the pallets that I'm going to load, and it tells me the sender and the receiver, and also it tells me the sending terminal and the receiving terminal, so I know where I'm loading it at and the terminal that it's going to. And I have the number of pallets, the weights, if it's frozen, if it's refrigerated, and I can make, on the back side, I can make a plan on how I'm going to load everything. So we don't want to end up noticing that we have too little space left because we loaded too low in the front when we should maybe have started loading double stacked or on beams in the front. Or we notice that we have too much weight on the truck or too little weight on the truck, and it ended up being too much weight on the trailer. So make yourself a plan before you start to load anything. So I'm making my plan on the paper, and then I go out and I check the pallets to make sure that the pallets actually is the same as it says on the paper, because your dispatcher might have gotten the wrong information from the sender. So one pallet might be an extra large pallet. So take a look at the list, take a look at the cargo, and make sure you have a plan prepared before you start to load anything.
So now we are inside the box of the truck. And of course, we're going to want to load high in the front and going lower and lower to the back. But we also want to start the load from the right. So the highest pallet to the right, and we're going lower and lower to the left, because the road is always leaning to the right to make the rainwater flow off from the road. So the cargo is always going to be bouncing against the right wall. So if we were to put the high cargo on the left side, the cargo will fall over the cargo to the right. Unless you live in the UK and you're driving on the wrong side of the road, or Australia. So in left-hand drive countries, you will do the opposite. And I also want this cargo here to reach a little bit over this pallet here. So this cargo will slide off from this pallet. And now these are very light pallets, so they're not gonna tip over. But if they were to be heavy pallets, I would want this cargo to reach a little bit higher to make support for this cargo, but there's no chance in this world that this cargo will fall over. The truck is going to have to fall over before these pallets fall over. But make it reach just almost over the pallet here so it doesn't slide off.
So here's another example. We have a pretty sturdy pallet in the bottom that we are going to be able to double stack on, but the top of the pallet might be a little bit fragile, and we don't want to put a pallet just with the 3 legs on the pallet. So what we do is we take an empty pallet, we put it upside down, and then the pressure is going to be more even throughout the whole, over the whole pallet. or the cargo on the pallet on the bottom might be a little bit too short or too narrow, so the pallet on the top, the legs aren't going to be standing totally on the cargo. And this we can also do with half pallets. As you can see here, I have 2 half pallets with gray boxes, and I can take half pallet, put it upside down. Now we have an even level, so I can put another pallet on top of that one. And then I can combine these two and stack them all together. Okay, let's say you've been loading 20 pallets of these, and you have more cargo you're gonna have to load behind. You can't double stack this, you can't put anything on top of them, and you are not at a position where you can pull a beam down as support. Then we are going to be able to make a step up if we make sure that the cargo here has at least 70 to 75% support here, so that only 25 to 30% of the cargo is reaching above this pallet. Of course, this can depend on how heavy these pallets are, but this is serial, so that weighs nothing. So in this case, I will be able to have like 50% of the pallets reaching over. If we don't have any other heavier pallets on top behind. But as a rule, don't let more than 25 to 30% of the cargo reaching over this pallet. And as you can see, I put a lower pallet in the bottom and the higher pallet on the top instead of the reversed, because like I said, I want as much as possible of the cargo on this pallet to be supporting in the front. And if I were to put this pallet in the bottom, this pallet will be reaching up here, and that pallet would be almost all of the cargo on that pallet will be reaching over this pallet. So if it's possible, put the lower pallet in the bottom and the higher pallet on the top. And we are going to be able to load double stack pallets behind single pallets if we have loading beams that we can pull down in front of the pallet to make support. If the cargo here is reaching above this pallet here, to make sure that this pallet is supported to the front by this cargo, because if this cargo were to be below this pallet, even if we have the beam up here, the pallet would be able to slide forward on these boxes, because these boxes are quite slippery. And I don't want the beam to be all the way in top of the cargo. I want it to be a little bit lower so that the cargo don't bend and slide underneath. So like this, we are going to be able to load double stacked behind the single pallet. If we are loading double stacked pallets and after a row is complete, we have 5 or 7 pallets left, we are not gonna ending with a complete row if we keep loading them straight in. So of course we can load 2 or 4 pallets turned to the side. But what we don't want to do is to put those turned pallets all the way in the back, because they are going to be very sensitive to falling over backwards. So what you want to do is at the last row, put 3 pallets straight in and put the turned pallets in front of that row. In that way, we are going to end with a row that is more supporting. And let's have a quick look at how I load pallets on the side. I don't like going with the pallet turned to the side over the loading bay, because a small bounce is enough to make the pallet move and jam the front wheel on the forklift, which could make the pallet fall over forward. So what I do is I go with the pallet straight in, and I then put the pallet diagonally on the side that I want to load it at. Then I push the corner of the pallet and turn it to the side. Then I can pick the pallet up from the side and move it forward into place. And when I'm unloading, I just do everything in reverse. I'm putting the pallet diagonally on the side. Then I push in the front corner. Then I pick it up and I can back out with the pallet straight. Okay, so if we look at the next one, we might want to be here that we have loaded our refrigerated cargo, and we are going to put the temp wall up, and then of course we want a complete row before the temp wall, and we have a half pallet, and we could put that pallet on top of those and put those on its side and make a complete row. But if we are like here in the front, we have the cooling unit in the ceiling that doesn't allow us to put the first row on its side, because we're going to be too much forward to be able to put the wall up. Or we are going to load double stack pallets, and we want to be using the beams as support for the double stack pallets. Then we need to have the pallets straight in. So I don't like to leave an empty space at the floor. So what I do is I take the half pallet, put it on top of an empty pallet, and now the pallet that is going to be standing behind here is going to be supported forward on the floor by this pallet here, so it doesn't slide forward. And to support the cargo, there's a couple of ways we can do it. We can use a pole, put it here, and then the pole is supported by the pallet to the front, and on the top it's going to be supported by the beams. Or we can pull down a beam all the way down, and this is going to depend on how low your beams are going and how high the cargo behind here is. But in this case, if we have the beam down here and the cargo on the pallet is reaching up on the beam here, it's going to be supported on the top on the beam, and in the bottom on the at the pallet in the front here. And if we were to load double stack pallets behind here now, we can put another beam on the same row here. So we have one beam down here and another beam here to support the double stack pallets. So this is something I'm gonna tell you that I don't like to do, but if we are gonna have to load on beams behind double stack pallets, the only time I will do that is if I'm able to have the beams at the height so the pallet on the beam is supported by the pallet in front, and so that this pallet isn't above this pallet and is supported in the cargo, because if it's supported in the cargo, it might slide forward on the beams, crushing the cargo, sliding more forward, and then fall off the beam in the back. So, as I say, I don't like to load on beams behind double stacked cargo, but this is the only time I will do it. And as you can see here, we have a little bit of space between this beam and the cargo here. And most of the time, and on most trailers, the beams are close together, so this beam is going to be a little bit more forward, and it's going to be hard to pull the beam down behind this cargo. So a lot of times you aren't even able to pull the beam down. So, but in this case, I can pull the beam down, and I'm going to be able to pull it this low so I can put the pallet against the other pallet. Even though we have our rules and our methods to use when we are loading, the reality is what it is, and we sometimes can have to bend our rules to be able to make room for everything. And then we're gonna have to drive accordingly to what we have loaded. So here I'm breaking my own rule by not loading higher cargo on the left side. But this was the only way to be able to load everything, and I drove with the knowledge that I had that pallet reaching above the cargo to the right. And here I had to break my rule and load double stacked pallets turned to the side at the back, but I put a board and a pallet up against the pallets and a pole tightly pushed against the pallets, pushing everything forward against the temp wall so that the top pallets aren't going to be able to wiggle anything at all, because if they wiggle they might knock the pole down. And then at the back I put 3 pallets straight in to make sure that all the pallets in the front are standing steady and not wiggle. And when we are working with refrigerated and frozen cargo, we are kind of spoiled that it's most of the time loaded on either a pallet or some kind of cargo carrier. But if we look at like package freight, the cargo can be basically anything. This is from when I'm loading at Schenker, and here there's no similar rules on how to load. You're just gonna have to be very creative to stack the cargo all the way up to the ceiling, and you just gonna have to make sure that the cargo is either supported or strapped down. Now I'm gonna show you something that I have to point out, that we are not allowed to use this method because the pallets aren't going to be legally secured. But in an emergency, when you have no pole or no straps left, you can put a couple of pieces of wood under the pallet like this and lower the pallet down. The pallet is going to be twisting and pushing against the wall. So you're not allowed to do this, but now you know. Let's finish with a couple of quick forklift tips. When loading double stacked pallets and you reach the back of the truck where you have to steer out to the sides, I put the pallet down and I push it over the ramp to prevent everything from wiggling and the top pallet to fall over. So let's say we put the double stack pallets down here and we want to put this one down on the floor. We're reversing back, and now you're lowering the pallet while it's against the wall, and that you don't want to do. You want to go out a bit from the wall and lower it down, because at the wall here you're gonna have this little edge here, and it's even gonna be up here sometime, and the pallet is gonna stuck against on top of this edge here, and then the pallet is going to get stuck here, and the outside is going to be lowering, and all the cargo is going to be tipping off the pallet. So go out a little bit from the wall when you're lowering the top pallets. When we get to the second to last row, we're gonna have to load the pallets on the side first. Put the pallet down, slightly turn into the middle, back out, then put the right fork into the left hole and push it into the wall. My pallet to the left is very light, so I'm gonna pick it up with only one leg on the forklift right away. Alright guys, that was everything for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and please share all your loading tips in the comment section. And please support me by subscribing to the channel, and so you don't miss out on any new videos. Please like the video, and I see you guys in the next video. Drive safe, take care, bye.